In 1545, deep in the Andes, a group of Spanish prospectors found a mountain. Not of gold, but of silver. A single peak so dense with ore that it would produce more wealth than anywhere on Earth for the next 200 years. They called it Potosí, the rich hill. By every measure, Spain had just won history's lottery. It already ruled the largest empire on the planet, and now it owned an almost endless supply of money itself. So here is the question that should bother you. A century later, Spain was bankrupt. Not once, but again, and again, and again. The richest empire in the world could not pay its bills. And the reason why is one of the most important lessons in the entire history of money. To understand what went wrong, you first have to understand the sheer scale of what Spain had found. Potosí was not a mine. It was a money-printing machine carved out of solid rock. The city that grew around it swelled to 160,000 people, larger than London or Paris at the time, clinging to a slope 13,000 feet up, in air so thin that nothing grew, fed entirely by the silver beneath it. The Spanish crown took a fifth of everything that came out of the ground. They called it the quinto real, the royal fifth. And for decades, the silver crossed the Atlantic in great armed treasure fleets, ton after ton, year after year. A river of money flowing into the heart of Europe. On paper, the monarchy had solved the oldest problem in all of government. It would never have to run out of money again. The wars, the palaces, the armies, all of it could be paid for, forever, by a mountain on the other side of the world. And that single belief, we will never run out of money, is exactly where the whole story begins to fall apart. Here is the part that almost everyone misses. Silver was not just something Spain sold, silver was the money. The coins in every European pocket, in every market, in every bank, were minted from it. So when Spain pulled oceans of silver out of that mountain and spent it, it was not getting richer in the way a business gets richer. It was increasing the quantity of money itself, and doing it far faster than the supply of real goods could ever grow. Think about what that means. More and more coins, all chasing the same bread, the same wool, the same iron, the same ships. And when there is more money chasing the same goods, prices do the only thing they can. They rise. And rise. Over the course of the 1500s, prices across Europe climbed roughly sixfold, a slow, grinding wave of inflation that historians would later name the price revolution. The silver that Spain dug up was worth less with every single shipment, because Spain itself was the one flooding the market with it. The empire had made the most dangerous mistake in finance. It had confused money with wealth. And they are not the same thing. Money is a claim on goods, wealth is the goods themselves. Spain was printing claims far faster than it was growing anything to claim. But there is a darker truth beneath this mountain of money, and it is the part most tellings leave out. That silver did not lift itself out of the rock, someone had to dig it. And to feed its endless hunger for labor, Spain revived and twisted an old Incan system called the mita. Under it, indigenous communities across the Andes were forced to send their men to Potosí, conscripted, by law, to work the mines. They walked for weeks to get there, sometimes hundreds of miles, often bringing their families, because they knew they might never return. Inside the mountain, the conditions were beyond brutal. Men worked in total darkness, in choking dust, and in the toxic mercury fumes used to refine the silver, for shifts that could last days at a time without ever coming back to the surface. The mercury alone killed slowly and certainly. Cave-ins, exhaustion, and poisoning took the rest. Potosí earned a grim nickname that still echoes today, the mountain that eats men. Over the roughly 3 centuries it was worked, historians estimate the human toll ran into the hundreds of thousands, and by some accounts, far higher. This is the part of the wealth that never appeared on any royal balance sheet. The crown counted the silver to the very last coin. It did not count the people. And that, too, is a lesson in financial history. The numbers a society chooses to measure are never the whole story. Behind every figure of glittering treasure, there is almost always a cost recorded nowhere, paid by people whose names the ledgers never bothered to keep. Now layer on the second mistake, because this is the one that truly broke them. Spain did not make things. It had silver, so it simply bought everything it needed from someone else. The grain came from abroad, the cloth came from the Dutch, the weapons, the tools, the finished ships, from the English, the Genoese, the Italians. Why build an industry of your own when you can just pay for the finished product? So the silver arrived in Seville and then flowed straight back out again, into the hands of foreign merchants and foreign bankers. One observer at the time put it perfectly. Spain, he said, was like a mouth. It took in the food only to pass it straight to the rest of Europe. And look at what that did. The countries selling to Spain built factories, shipping fleets, banks, and skilled workforces, real, durable, compounding wealth. Spain built cathedrals, palaces, and a deep addiction to easy money. To pay for its endless wars, the crown began borrowing against next year's treasure fleet before it had even left Peru. Bankers in Genoa and Augsburg lent the king money today, against silver still sitting inside a mountain and ocean away. And when a fleet came in late or smaller than promised, the entire structure cracked. Spain defaulted on its debts in 1557, then 1560, then 1575, then 1596. The richest empire on earth, a serial bankrupt. There is a name for what happened to Spain, and economists still use it today. They call it the resource curse. It works like this. A country strikes it rich, a mountain of silver, a sea of oil, a field of diamonds. And that single windfall is so overwhelming that the country simply stops building everything else. Why bother with the slow, hard work of industry, of education, of institutions, when the money comes straight out of the ground? But that windfall is a trap. Because the moment the resource runs dry or loses its value, there is nothing underneath it. No factories, no skilled trades, no engine to keep the wealth turning over. Spain is the original case study. It had the single greatest source of money in the world, and it used that money to buy its way out of ever having to build a real economy. The hard truth is that the real wealth was never the silver at all. The real wealth was the workshops in Holland and the shipyards in England, the things Spain could have built and chose not to, because it didn't think it had to. And here is why a 500-year-old story should feel deeply, uncomfortably familiar. Strip away the galleons and the mountain, and Spain's central mistake was painfully simple. It believed that creating more money was the same thing as creating more wealth. It is not. When the amount of money in a system grows faster than the amount of real goods and services, the result is always, eventually, the same. Each unit of money buys a little less. We have a single word for it today: inflation. Spain's silver was simply the printing press of its age. A modern government doesn't need to sail a treasure fleet across an ocean. It can expand the money supply with a few keystrokes. But the underlying physics have not changed one bit. A currency is only ever worth the goods and the productivity that stand behind it. Flood the system with claims faster than you grow the things to claim, and every claim is worth less. Potosí proved it in silver. And every currency crisis since, from Weimar Germany to the modern day, has proven it all over again, in paper. By the early 1800s, the silver was finally running thin. The mountain was hollow. The empire was crumbling. And Spain, a nation that had once controlled a quarter of the entire world, had become one of the poorer corners of Western Europe. The richest empire in history was brought down, not by an enemy army, but by its own treasure. By the seductive, and almost unkillable, idea that if you simply have enough money, you can never truly go broke. Potosí still stands today, a hollowed-out mountain above a quiet city, most of its silver long gone. But the lesson it carved into the world is still running, in every economy that mistakes printing money for building wealth. Because money, in the end, is only ever a claim. And a claim is worth exactly what stands behind it, and not a single coin more.